All right, guys. So this is episode 21. I can't believe it's already 21 episodes. And really special one. We got Wendi Ferreira, one of the best wrestling moms I've ever dealt with, and you know, super supportive of the program, of course, of her boys, but you know, of all the boys, and still talks to us about Greeley, wondering what's going on. I feel like misses the program. I still talk to her about Jacob and wrestling, and you know, she's very much still in the fold, just like Schreiber is, and I love that you know, their kids are gone, but they're still involved. You know, so Wendi, just how I like been basically starting all of these interviews. I know you didn't start wrestling, but do you remember when Jacob got into wrestling and how you guys kind of, you know, found the sport and got into it?
Yeah, so if you remember way back when, Jacob was a little pudgy guy, and he was in second grade, and well, you probably don't remember Anthony, but Mike does.
Story I'll tell you after, but I want to hear this part.
Okay. Yeah. And so also what many of you probably don't know about Jacob is if Jacob wasn't active, he drove us crazy, like nuts. So we had to keep him active. So he was doing like Boys and Girls Club basketball, and that was twice a week, and that was good, but it wasn't enough for Jacob in the winter. So we needed a winter activity. So I looked in the, you know, rec bulletin, and they were like, oh, wrestling 2 nights a week, $100 or something. Like, Jacob, why don't we try this? This is a lot of hours. Let's try this. So he started with Mike, and of course I'm a teacher and a mom, so I'm double crazy. And I was like, who is this Mike DeBellis guy? Is Jacob going to be okay here? And so we started at Greeley with Mike and the youth program, and the rest is history.
It's crazy. And
it was 2 nights a week, and Jacob got to run around, and he just thought it was the cat's meow. And then, you know, he got to be best friends with Bronson Cianovich at youth wrestling. Like, that's how they met. And that's how I met Miette and Steve, and it was just kismet.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you remember that, D, when Jacob and the Ferreiras kind of got involved with wrestling?
Yeah, of course. I remember, you know, at that time, you know, we were running around like, you know, crazy. And Wendi was one of the people who was like, hey, what can I do to help? What can I do? And before every like winter break, we would have a party. And we don't do that anymore because I'm not doing it.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, you used to have those.
What kind of party? A youth party?
Yeah.
This must have been before me.
We used to have parties for anything. It was great.
Well, Mike was always asking for baked goods, and I could do that.
Yeah, Wendy's the cookie master. We're not going to dive completely into that, but the best cookies out there.
But it was great. I mean, just the way that the way the parents, you and Miette, and the other parents that were involved, but most of you guys, you know, made that whole team, a bunch of youth kids, feel like so important, and it was just it really worked really well for us. Kept the kids involved.
Probably the reason they stayed in it, you know, because of you, DeBellis, and Wendi doing all that stuff. Like, that's probably the reason why we had a nice number coming out of there. When Jay was in the second grade, what year was that around? Do you remember, Wendi? Is that a crazy question?
Second grade, so he was like 7, so it was 2007, 2008.
Okay, so when I met Jacob, it was like probably 2 or 3 years later. He was still in the youth. He was like, you know, 4th or 5th grade or whatever it was. And I'll never forget this. I thought it was the funniest thing ever because I was like this young, fired up college guy, and I was mostly dealing with the high school guys at that point, you know, pretty much completely. But there was one practice when coach was like, hey, can you stay for youth? I want them to meet you, or whatever it may have been. Like, I forgot how it was. Like, he just wanted me.
I was trying to sucker you into doing it.
So I stayed that day. And I remember Jacob walking up to me with like double knee pads on and basically telling me how to do a move. And I remember looking at Jacob like, who is this guy? Like, obviously he's a little kid and I thought it was like cute and funny, but I'm like, oh yeah, you sure about that? And he's like, he was very confident. And I'm like, I remember like getting that feeling though, I kind of like his attitude. Like, it wasn't a bad attitude, but he was very confident in what he was saying. I was like, this guy might have something here, but I just remember, like you said, pudgy, coming up to me with 2 knee pads on and so confident about how to do a post-block go behind. I'm like, okay. I'm like, I'll show you what I think. If you like it, you can continue doing it. And little did we know, you know, 18-year-old, well, actually 19, 20-year-old me and Jacob were going to be battling in the wrestling room, and he's tough as heck. Who knew that like trajectory would happen? But it's pretty cool. You know, but so how was youth, Wendi, for him? Pretty much the whole experience. Do you remember like some?
Oh my God, he looked forward to Mondays and Wednesdays. You know, like it's still emblazoned in my head. Monday, Wednesday. He loved it. You know what, Jacob? So when I was a little kid, my grandfather would like wrestle with me and tussle with me. I was like a little tomboy, I was also chunky kid, and I was rough and tumble and dirty and gross. And Jacob was just like me. Jacob is mini me. I mean, obviously we're different now, but he loved, the fact that he got to be aggressive and got to throw people and got to like pin people. He just thought that was awesome.
Yeah. Well,
and then they also played, I don't remember the name of the game, where they crawled on their knees and chased people. Yeah, whatever. He loved that.
he still does. I think we played it like when he came back to practice this year with like the youth kids. He was there and he was like tossing youth kids around.
And I'm sure he had a win, because Jacob had a win.
I love that about him though. But I want to stay on youth just for a little longer, just because I feel like there was so much in high school that I don't want to skip over youth. Because high school to me is where I knew him best, and I knew him as a youth guy and a modified guy too. But the high school is where like Jacob became. He always was special, but that's where Jacob really became like who he is, I think. So do you remember any ups and downs in youth, Wendi, like with wins and losses? Like, how was he? I remember him being pretty tough towards the end of youth, but in the beginning, how was he like as a competitor?
Well, it's funny. When we were in youth, Mike would have us, at the beginning of youth, Mike would have us go to these tournaments. And really the kids had no idea what they were doing, but, Jacob was strong. He was a bull. So he would do okay. He would do really okay at those tournaments. He never won, though. He never came in first place. And then Nathan, I think Nathan, who is his little brother, he came in first a couple times. Like, I think that drove Jacob crazy, but very supportive. But Jacob, he loved the tournaments. He was always saying, "Mom, find me a tournament, find me. When's that Brewster one? When's that Carmel one? I know it's coming up. We got to go." And then for a little while, like, we were just going. Either we were going by ourselves, or we were going with, and Steve was like the best coach for them at times when they were youth, because I don't know. I know Jacob is still this person, but Jacob's really coachable. Mm-hmm. And so Steve would say something and Jacob would do it. And Steve would look at me like, "That's amazing. No one listens to me." And Jacob would listen. So he was pretty good at youth. I think what really got him fired up was our first trip to Binghamton for youth states. I think it was the year there was the fire drill and we all stood outside for hours and hours waiting for Brock to finish up, because I think mine were already done. But he just,
right before the match, the fire.
Yeah. I think there's a whole discussion we could have about Jacob and Brock, and Jacob's admiration of Brock, and him wanting to emulate what Brock was. But I think like his youth was good. He learned to love wrestling. But just so everyone out there knows, Jacob was not a year-round wrestler. He was Mr. Lacrosse. He was Mr. Baseball. He was Mr. Football. Jacob played everything because he couldn't be more active. He had to be active.
Which I love for kids at that age, though. I mean, when you get to high school and like Jacob did, and I'm not saying you have to do that, but if you feel like this is your thing, maybe it's okay to kind of specialize at that point. If you feel like this is really your thing, you're going to go do it in college. But when you're a kid, you should be exposed to a lot of stuff. To go back on what you were saying, and like she brought up Nate. Nate's the man. He ended up not wrestling his whole career, but was a good wrestler, great kid. I still stay in contact with him. It must have been, I think, it's a good family thing in the beginning. Like high school wrestling is different, but I think, and I still love obviously high school wrestling for the family or whatever. But when you're youth, you have 2 boys, maybe you have 3 boys, whatever the families have, right? You go to these tournaments, you stay in these hotels, you go swimming, like. That's gotta be kind of fun. Like, and I think the kids enjoy that. And I think that's different in wrestling than it is in most other youth sports. Like you guys are going all over the place. I think you probably have some fun memories from then, right, Wendi?
Oh my gosh. But I also, I have fun memories from like Cooperstown too, from when we
played
baseball.
That's true.
But anything you get to do as a family, but wrestling really, it was especially when both boys were wrestling, we were always together. We were traveling on weekends. It was so much fun. And yes, the hotels were fun. The pools were fun. And I know my family I have the only children in our family. I have 2 older sisters. So my sisters would come and watch wrestling. My oldest sister is the biggest wrestling fan there is. She knows more stats than you, Anthony. She'll text me things like, "Oh, Jacob's going to wrestle." Blah, 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 blah.
I love it.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Amazing.
What did?
Chicago, right? She's from Chicago?
The one that follows wrestling more is in Denver. The other one is in Chicago, yeah.
They both were at states near here, though, correct?
Oh, they both were at states. They were at sectionals.
I thought they were, but I just remember like that picture in my head. Like I could.
Oh yeah, I had them flying from all over the country.
Awesome. That's a good family. I love it. I love it. I mean, I said it before in another interview, and I think Wendy's a perfect example. Is like, Wendy didn't know much about wrestling until Jacob and them got into it. And it's one of those sports that, of course, and Wendy, I'll let you speak on it because I could be totally putting words in your mouth right now. But like, when you get to know it like at a high level, you really start to like it, right? Of course, you want to see Jacob and Nathan and those guys wrestle more than anybody else, and that's her babies, and she loves to see them wrestle. But, it's fun. Like, I think Wendy kind of became a fan of wrestling. Is that true? Like, you kind of like liked it, right?
I remember when they were youth wrestling, and I had no idea. I was really loud in youth. I was one of those crazy moms sitting on the mat, yelling at their kid. I was never telling them what to do. I was just saying, go, go, go. I was never like saying, oh, shoot or anything. But then once I learned what they were doing, and I learned what things were called, I then started filming so that I'd shut my mouth completely. But like, I was that mom as a youth who knew nothing. I knew nothing. And then I was that mom who other moms were sitting next to being like, what is he doing? Is he okay? Is he going to live through this? And I loved that. I loved knowing what I knew. And I loved being able to sit next to someone. I mean, I can remember sitting next to people. Andre's mom, Catherine, she could not watch Andre wrestle.
I remember that too. Yeah.
And she would hide her face. And I would sit next to her with my arm around her. And I would tell her play by play what Andre was doing. Because she knew all the moves. But I would tell her every single thing. I'm like, he's good. He's good. He's not so good. But I love it now. I loved it. I love watching now. College, it's hard because they don't wrestle as much.
Yeah, it's hard. And it's just a whole, like, we'll get into that a little too, but it's a whole different world where, you got to start as a little fish again and work your way up. But
right.
Jacob's that guy, so I wouldn't be surprised if he did work his way up. I hope Kara's not like that, like Mrs. Nesbitt, great lady. I hope she's able to watch the matches and not be like, oh, we gotta watch. Like,
well, and I got, and it's been said at other interviews, I got as much pleasure watching other people wrestle as my own. I when I was working concessions at like Really Duels, I would be like, I got to go watch this one wrestle. I got to, like, they were my own. I just wanted to see everyone wrestle.
You were great. And it was mostly really guys, but it wasn't only like Johnny Santos and some of the guys that were Jacob's buddies. You gotta, your son loves these kids. You kind of end up loving them too.
They were all at my house all the time.
Yeah. So it's like a great relationship. I think it's closer than a lot of other sports. What were you going to say, Coach? I saw you.
I think that one thing about Jacob that comes across really strong is that he picked the right people to hang around with. Mm-hmm. He picked, I mean, if you look at his
in both places, high school, club and everywhere, high school.
Get guy. I mean, you're talking about the not only the coolest kids at the school, but the nicest kids, the most academic kids, the best athletes, the people that were really doing the right thing for everybody around them. He picked the right friends.
Well, I don't know. It's probably, a mix of Wendi and Jose and what Jacob is, but we talked about, guys like Brock and guys like Scotty and Mitchell. They were great captains, but there was nobody like Jacob. Nobody. And that's not a wrestling standpoint. It was the fact that, like, he could lead with the iron fist, but he could also show, like, compassion at the same time. He was good at playing both sides of the fence. And honestly, Aaron and Matt were really good at it too. That group right there is going to be really hard to duplicate, because they were all so different from each other in so many ways. But they all had the same idea of, like, we want to be the best, and Aaron's going to go this way to do it. Jacob's going to go this way. Matt's going to go this way. But they all figured it out pretty much, and they all led in such different ways, but they all were great. They all were really good. But Jacob was such a leader. So I think he was the only 10th grade captain ever.
Yeah, 100%. Jacob was our only, and that was the only time we ever voted on it too.
Did we? I don't remember. I think me and you already decided beforehand on that vote for the people that are listening meant nothing.
Yeah, but they voted for Jacob.
They voted for him anyways, but I think me and you talked before, like, he's going to be a captain. He's working really hard.
Right. But
I think that was a thing. But it was deserved, and the kids must have seen it too. So we went through youth there. Middle school, he was pretty successful in middle school. He was tough. Do you remember, like, the transition, Wendi, from youth to middle school?
I think he was just dying to really wrestle. Yeah. Like, for him to get to modified, he was just so excited to, like, be a part of the team and be a part of a team. I mean, he was still, though, this was his winter sport. He was still playing travel baseball. He was still playing football. He was still playing lacrosse. Actually, yeah, I don't remember when he switched over to lacrosse, but he was just psyched to really wrestle. Like youth was youth. He didn't consider that wrestling. He knew that you didn't really have to win something to go to youth states. You could just go if your mom signed you up and paid the bill. He figured that out. So, but then when he got to wrestle and he had success in modified, he loved it.
Well, I bet you loved the idea of like dual meets and like being a real team and the whole thing. And he did great. I remember that at that time I knew Jacob well. Like by the time he was in middle school, I knew what was going on with the Ferreiras. Maybe not, definitely not the relationship we had in high school, but we were close enough where I knew exactly what he was doing, where he was. Well, was Jacob an 8th grader, Wendi, when he started doing the club? 8th or 9th?
I think 9th, because he couldn't give up his other sports. As Mike said, he had such good friends. Like his best friends, one turned out to be the baseball captain, and one turned out to 2 were the football captains, 3 were the football captains. So like he didn't want it. He knew he wanted to wrestle, but he just loved everything. And so I think he had asked me if he could join the club, and I'm like, sure, but you can't do everything. And so then it was hard for him to decide. So I don't think it was till freshman year. And I think he probably regrets that now, like in hindsight. Yeah. But you can't go back.
Oh, you mean like he would have wanted to do it earlier?
Well, I think and it'll be interesting. I hope Jacob does his interview before he watches this one. It would be interesting to see, like, if he had been in the club in 7th grade, where would he be today?
I mean, that's with a lot of the kids, right? And especially a guy with Jacob with his work ethic, like who would know? But I do feel like, we'll get more into his high school. That guy that beat him in the state finals, Jake Logan, nice kid, good wrestler. I mean, any other year, Jacob got really good. Any other year, he's a state champ. I mean, you had a top 10 guy in the country in your weight class. I mean, it just happened to be, that's what it was. So it wasn't like, maybe if Jacob started a year earlier, he wins that match. And he could have won that match anyways, though, I feel. Like, the kid was really good, but Jacob was really good, too. I mean, they both were really good. So he really, like, we'll get into the jumps he made. The jumps that Jacob Ferreira made are unbelievable. And I don't think he'll see this either, because this is 21 and we're letting it out every like 3 days. So unless Jacob searches it up, right now our 2 biggest fans, I just want to put it out there, are Wendi Ferreira, I think he's won almost every single one, and Matt Shriver. David's up there too, but Matt, I asked Matt the other day how many you watch, and he's like 18 deep. So he's in there. And I think Jacob's like wishy-washy a little, because he's Jacob and he's doing whatever Jacob's doing, playing Fortnite or God knows what, and wrestling. Probably doing both of those 2 things. The 2, which are important things. But Matthew's like, I don't know. So those are our 2 biggest fans. What are you gonna say? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think also what you said, I think for Jacob, the big jump, for him, youth to modified to even freshman year, like he was a late bloomer. So like freshman year, he wasn't the greatest wrestler, but I think you kind of got to wait for your body to catch up with you.
Sure. Well, we talked about, Wendi, like we said, you've been watching a bunch of these. I forgot what interview we talked about. Coach, was it Nadler? We were talking about like he was more of a middleweight when he was a freshman and he had some success. Like being a 160 pounder, Jacob was a 160 pounder as a freshman. That's ridiculously hard, because I would say 70% of those guys are 11th or 12th graders, and like Wendi said, it takes your body a little time to fill into yourself.
I think when I used to go to matches when he was a freshman, and my mother used to come, my father and everyone, my in-laws, they were all like, Jacob's wrestling a 30-year-old. He has a mustache. He has a beard. Are you going to let him go out there? And there was Jacob, like a ping pong ball still.
I'm going to hear a little known fact, and this is a compliment to Coach Sabellis. I don't know if Coach Sabellis here remembers this, but when Jacob was an 8th grader going into 9th grade, at the beginning of practice, at the beginning of the season, Coach came up to me. And again, I already knew Jacob. I didn't know him that well at the time. And Coach was like, Jacob's going to be good. He's going to be good this year.
Mike DeBellis said that?
DeBellis said that. For us, this year, he's going to be good. And I looked at DeBellis, I'm like, I know he's going to be good, but this year you think he's going to be competitive at 160? Like, I don't know about that. I remember questioning him, like, that's a tough weight class for a freshman. And, like, DeBellis was certain. He's like, no, he's got it. He's going to be good. Do you remember that, DeBellis?
Yeah, well, what he has is the mental ability.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Even if he lost a match, he still it lagged behind the reality, because he never thought he was going to lose. He never, and he was
to this day,
which I love, which I absolutely love.
But you're that, Anthony. You are that person. Like in your head, in all the million billion conversations I forced you to have with me, my son was never going to lose. One of the things I have on my notes is you would look at me in any match. You were like, he's fine. Like I needed that confidence, but you had that. You were like, he won't lose.
A lot of times we were right. A couple of times we were wrong. But, like, it wasn't wrong because of Jacob. Like, you have to have faith in your athletes, and Jacob has to have faith in himself, and he does, and we do, and he did everything right. You know, that's why it was and we'll get to his later career as we go on, but that's why some of those losses were so difficult even for us as coaches, because he did everything right. And it was frustrating. But he still had an unbelievable career. But when you do everything right, you know, you wish for, like, the best of the best. And I think he was capable of the best of the best. And sometimes, you know, the chips don't fall your way when there's two super talented guys competing for the same thing. Somebody's got to lose, you know, and it happens.
I don't think he ever lost.
Well, we'll get to that too. I don't think he learned from every loss he had. I think it's different in college now, and not in a bad way. I think it's just a different world, and he's getting through that, and he'll get through that like he did in high school, right? But I remember his freshman year, just to stay in freshman year and not to go over because I'll get it crazy. A-Rod was telling us this story. I don't know if he told us this last year or he told us this year, but we were talking about it. And it was around the same time that I knew Jacob was going to be something. So as the year went on, his freshman year, I remember if he was down by 1 or 2 in the third period, he was winning the match. And I loved that about him. And I was so excited. I'm like, he's going to break this kid. And Jacob loved it. It was that same – me, you, and Jacob all had – and Wendi too, and Jose, I'm sure, all felt it, right? Like it was that same connection where this guy's going to keep coming. He's going to break this kid. And I loved it. And it was Fox Lane. And I think was that the year we beat them? Or it was a close match. Maybe we were supposed to beat them. It was a good match. And Fox Lane had a senior. And this kid had muscles. He wasn't, you know, the Johnny Santos in later years. He wasn't a section champ, but he was a solid guy, you know, big, muscular guy. And Jacob was a freshman, chubby, whatever. And the kid was, if I remember correctly, the kid was putting it on Jacob. And then Jacob absolutely broke him, won the match. And A-Rod still tells this story about that match. And that's the Fox Lane coach. So that's the type of impression he left, right? That's his freshman year. And at that point, I'm like, Jacob's going to be the man, you know? So
I used to watch if Jacob was wrestling, and we had 2 people up, I would never watch Jacob. I would always go to the other match, and I would watch Jacob out of the corner of my eye. And it didn't matter what the score was. I remember, I don't know if you were next to me at the tour. He was down by 4 or 5 points in the third period. And I go, he's going to win this match. Watch. He's going to win this match. Somehow, some way, he won the match.
Two people that were the best at that, too. Jacob and Izzy. Jacob and Izzy, hearts of champions for sure. Like, you know, it doesn't matter what the score is. Doesn't matter how much time's left on the clock. Like, they were going. Jacob had some matches, man, where I probably lost about 10 to 15 years of my life. You know, semifinals of states, my Lord. Did you really have to do that to us? I wish we did what Marina was talking about. We could put a screen up and show a video, because I could have showed the video of the semis, because I still have the recording of Wendi recording that match.
And I'm shaking.
Yeah, but I kind of love it because it's so organic, like authentic of what really was happening. They were all freaking out in the crowd. We were freaking out. I think I punched you, DeBellis. You like threw me to the side. It was awesome. But
so one of my favorite moments ever.
It was awesome. It might have been. It's definitely my top 5. Another moment that's going to be surprising, and I think me and Wendi talked about this before, is in my top 5 too. Me and DeBellis have definitely talked about it, but we'll get to that later. So freshman year, he did great. Almost qualified for sectionals. What's that, Coach?
The anticipation is
I don't want to jump from freshman to senior year. I'm trying to stay in the years, even though I am jumping around a lot. So sophomore year, he makes a big jump, same weight class, but like Wendi said, he's starting to fill into himself a little bit. That definitely made a difference. I think he was always confident, but I think he started to really believe that this is the path I'm taking and I can beat anybody. I think that started to become a thought. I think he made the county finals that year. He was 6th at sectionals, but he definitely could have done better at sectionals, but wrestled tough. You know, Alex Leone, who, you know, was a nice kid, but Jacob ended up having a way better career. At that time, Alex was like number 1 or 2 seed at sectionals and got upset. So knocked Jacob into this 5th, 6th match, I think, or something along those lines. So things happen. But do you remember the transition, Wendi, from his freshman year to his sophomore year?
Now that they all blend together.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard.
But I think that's when he started going to Empire. I think that's when he started training full. I think he played football freshman and sophomore year. And then I think after football season, sophomore year, I don't remember if he played, actually, I think he played lacrosse sophomore year, spring, but was also going to Empire. I don't remember.
I think I vaguely remember that. And the special thing about Jacob, and I think Coach DeBellis and I have spoke about it, But a special thing about Jacob, especially when he went up to Empire, that place is tough. You know, that's not trying to pat me, John, or anybody else on their backs. There's good wrestlers in that room. And a lot of times when a new person comes into that room, they try to stay away from the superstars, right? They try to go with somebody they feel comfortable with. They try to, if one of their teammates are there, they want to go with their teammate. And I have to break them up half the time. Like, why are you going with your teammate? You're at a club. Like, you shouldn't be going with your teammate right now. But a lot of kids want to do that, right? They want to find the easier partner. Jacob would harass the best kids in the club. Harass them. And that's a plus of me being a coach there too, because they couldn't say no to him because I would make sure that they would wrestle him. But he wasn't scared. Like, he would go up to Evan Frank and ex-Evan when Evan was really good at the time and wrestle with him. He would go up to Anthony Falbo when Anthony Falbo was really good. I mean, these are really good wrestlers, and Jacob didn't really have business wrestling them at that moment, like as a 10th grader. But I think doing those workouts, that helped him become who he was. He was chasing greatness, and he saw, hey, you're good, I want to wrestle with you. You're not so good, I don't want to wrestle with you. And he was pretty blunt about it. Like, he didn't pull any punches, and I appreciated it, you know? Do you remember that when you going up to practice sometimes and maybe seeing him scrap with some of the guys? You're like, what is he doing wrestling with this guy?
Well, you know what? I often didn't go in because it wasn't, there was not really a place to watch back then.
Yeah.
They didn't build that balcony yet. I would sit in the car or whatever. But I can remember him like making plans to meet Falbo to wrestle, or your cousin. Like, he was not going the easy route.
Well, at that time, that's right. That's funny that I didn't think about him and Adam being around the same size, but Jacob's sophomore year, when he went to Easterns at 160, that's the same year Adam won Easterns at 160. They were in the same weight class. I forgot that. I forgot that they were in the same weight class.
And I think that also, that year is the first year, like, when Jacob bought into Empire, John bought into Jacob right away and sent him to Cornell that first year. That was back when, I mean, Cornell was having, I don't remember when it was, but I ended up driving 5 boys to Cornell for a camp. I don't know what time of year it was, but.
I think I know, it's a combine thing they do, right? The thing that we do now, Cornell. They had like a bunch of college coaches there. Was that?
Yeah, they had a bunch of college coaches there, but it was like a week of training, and I took 2 kids from Connecticut, and I think Grippy, and maybe Grant. Oh, and Grant, because I remember pulling off the road to get Grant in Brewster. And like Jacob, I think Jacob was like John's, I'm gonna send Jacob. Like, John must have seen something, and I'm gonna send Jacob. And I think that like got him.
I think John definitely saw something in Jacob. I also think that I probably annoyed John to no end, that he needed to see something in Jacob. If we might interview Khalid tomorrow, so Khalid will have a funny perspective on that, because I used to always like get in John's ear, like, Jacob's really good. Jacob's really good. He's gonna be really tough. And John never didn't think he was gonna be really tough, but me and John would argue about the Greeley guys. He would always say like, "Oh, you're just saying that because they're Greeley guys." And I like used to always be a thing. That was him with Aaron. That was him with Jacob. That was him with Matt. And they ended up being pretty darn good, John. So there you go. But
if you're listening, John Deagle.
If you're listening, John. No, but he loves them. And I'm sure he was ecstatic, how Jacob improved, and, the decisions Jacob's had, wrestling NC State now. I'm sure John loves that, and the level of competition there. But we'll jump to junior years. There's 2 memories for me, junior year coach, and I don't know if you have any specific memories, but 2 things that really stand out to me. His junior year. One is Oswego. That's when he got that huge win in the semifinals against the kid that was like, I don't know if he was all state or he was definitely section champ. He was good. And the kid Jacob broke him. Absolutely broke him. And I was so fired up that I must have been yelling like a crazy person, because when that kid came to shake my hand, he gave me a stare like I was the worst human being on planet Earth. I'll never forget it. And I remember smiling at him and smiling at Jacob when he came off the mat. And what did Jacob do? He went and did his cool down. That match was unbelievable. And then he
Wait, can I interrupt you for a minute?
Yeah.
You remember at the beginning of that match, that kid
staring him down.
He knew he was going to win, and
yeah,
he literally stood. You could count for 8 seconds, just staring him down. Like
he tried to take her corner, Wendi. I don't know if you remember that. I had my stuff there, and I put Jacob's stuff down, and he tried to come after. I'm like, what is this kid doing? And like he ended up walking away. But you know me, like I'd like to think I'm a nice person, but I was fired up. I knew Jacob was like on the verge of being that guy. So I was not thinking Jacob was going to win that match. I'm like, this kid's in for a rude awakening. He doesn't know what's happening right now. And when Jacob won, Danny Hall wasn't at the tournament. And I remember calling Danny Hall because I already talked to DeBellis. I already talked to Wendi. I was already fired up. I'm still fired up. I couldn't like calm myself. And I called Danny. I'm like, you don't know what he just did. And I gave like Jacob the phone and talked to Danny. And I was pumped. That was a great match. Do you remember that, D? Kid was a little rough too.
Yeah. Anytime up in Oswego, man, we got to take what we can get up there because the refs aren't with us.
But then like the finals, he beat the kid even worse, I believe. Like I think that match was the match. That semis match was the match. That match stands out to me. And then his round of 12 at Eastern States was a war against the kid from Pearl River. And that showed me when you're able to place at Eastern States, you know you're the real deal. You know, and I saw that. I think Jordan Wallace took like third or fourth. Like Wendi said, I always believed that Jacob could win. And when Jacob placed eighth and Jordan took fourth, I'm like, we're not that far behind. Like we're there. We could close this gap. And that gave me like, you know, a little bit more excitement too towards where he was going. And I'm sure Wendi, you had the car ride home with him. I'm sure that was a nice moment for him to place at that tournament.
Yeah, and you know, Jacob, as serious as he took things, he recovered pretty quickly. Yeah. You know, like our car rides home, and truthfully, and I hope Brock listens to this, the year that Brock lost Oswego because of the disqualification, we met them like an hour down the road at Planet Wildwood.
Yeah, we were there.
Wings. Yeah, Buffalo Wild Wings. And Brock was like recovered. Like, of course he was still down, but like he ate with us. He was smiling and laughing. And I think Jacob saw that. So Jacob he was able to recover. I mean, I'm sure deep down there's still, I mean, I still think he has regrets and he still can think about, yeah. But he was pretty good. But I think, you know, if you think about where he was as a junior and then where he was as a senior, and he did win Oswego twice. Yeah. You know.
I mean, unbelievable. Jacob is, you know, a top 5 Greeley wrestler in history. In history. I'm not talking about with the era of Jacob, Aaron, and Matt. I would say all 3 of them are pretty much in that top 5. Like, and that's pretty, you know, crazy that they all were on the same team. Maybe not crazy. Maybe it happened for a reason and people were bought in, and that's just kind of what happens. But to play on Wendy's point of like coachable, you know, Aaron junior and senior year, very coachable. Listen to everything me and Coach Abella said. Matt was always very coachable, but I give him a kick in the butt here and there, but always did a great job. There is nobody that I've coached that I literally would say, I will pass. He'd pass the elbow. I'd say, you know, level change. He'd level change. I'd say snap. He would do everything I said literally right after I would say it. It was crazy. And he kind of got to the point where he was like talking like I talk and saying things I say. And it's like he was a sponge. Like he like literally wanted to be good at the sport. And he's like, my coaches know what they're talking about. I'm going to try to follow what they're doing. And it worked. Like he immersed himself into the sport. Was he meant to be good at wrestling? Probably. Was he meant to be great like he is? I don't know. And I think it probably was because he immersed himself into it and believed and trusted us, you know, and trusted his parents and trusted his support systems. You know, I always talk about Jacob Wendi, and you probably know I do, but like Jacob was a barely above 500 wrestler as a freshman, not a section qualifier. And he became a state finalist against a guy that was very good. You know, why can't anybody do that, right? He just put in the work. And he deserved to be there, you know. So I don't know, but he was super coachable. I don't know if you remember, Wendi, do you remember us coaching him and him being like, watching him kind of like follow what we were doing and like really like buy into the whole system?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Like it was for Jacob, you know, he didn't listen to me like he listens to you. I mean, he's a good kid, but he believed in you, both of you. Like there's, to this day, I mean, you guys know this, but I don't know if everyone watching, like Jacob wants to be a teacher. He wants to be a teacher like Mike. He wants to be a wrestling coach like both of you. I mean, Anthony, you're a teacher too, of course. He wants to be a teacher so he can be a wrestling coach.
Really? Come back to Greeley.
That'd be perfect timing for us too.
He wants to live in Chappaqua and bring his kids up here and be a wrestling coach.
I like it. I like everything you're saying.
I love it. You could take, so eventually, what, Coach, we got like 15 years left, me and you together. Then you might take 5 years off, be like a consultant. Jacob will come in. Then Jacob will take my spot, and then I'll retire.
Listen, I'll do whatever to get Jacob on board.
We'll get him in. But yeah, he was so bought in. Like
the assistant's assistant.
You know, but like even Anthony, when he did his senior experience with you, and just
awesome,
coming back and wrestling youth or running a practice, like I can see it. He emulates you.
kids still, there's a kid. So when Jacob did his senior experience, my 8th graders now were 6th graders because that was 2 years ago. So I have 6th to 8th grade. So a couple of those kids had Jacob. And this year, that kid would still ask me, when's Jacob coming back? When's Jacob coming back? When's Jacob coming back? So he like, I have a lot of kids, and if the people that are listening, the whole Greeley team comes to the Christmas thing or whatever, which is a great time, and all the kids do great. They do great with my kids. They play with them. It's a fun day. But not many kids had the natural ability like Jacob to like relate with the kids, play with the kids, make them feel comfortable, like joke with them. He seemed to like wholeheartedly enjoy it, you know? So that was a really fun senior experience. And I wish we have another Greeley guy do that soon because it was a blast. What was that, Wendi?
I just thought of 2 things that, I don't know if you remember this, just 2 youth experiences. So I don't know how old he was, maybe 8, maybe 10. He wanted to do a wrestling camp in the summer. And I don't know if you've heard, you have to have heard this story. So I took him up to John Jay to Bill Schwartzweiger's camp. And Nathan went too. It was a 1-week camp. And they went through the day. I picked them up. They got in the car and they're like, we're never going back. They hated it. I had to call Bill and say, listen, you said this camp was going to be some wrestling, some games, some fun. They had no fun. They don't want to come back. And I'm not an easy mom. Like, I wasn't going to like, what?
That's not true.
Well, I don't let them give up too easily, but like,
oh, I see what you're saying. I'm sorry.
They were exhausted. They were like, we did nothing fun. We just drilled all day. It must have been very young. It must have been still youth.
They were young. Yeah, I remember that camp.
And
it was John probably. It was probably John. Was it Deagle one of you?
It was John. No, it was not John Deagle.
Because they had a camp together eventually. Maybe it was before that.
No, it was Bill and some famous wrestler. And
it was
Troy Nickerson.
Yes.
You want to hear something funny, Wendi? I'll send it to you after the match. Before you tell the rest of the story, it's actually hysterical. That flyer for that camp, I told the Bells my mom had stuff like she was cleaning out the closets and she had stuff like from when I was in high school. And there's a flyer for that Troy Nickerson camp that Bill put a quote from me saying that the camps were so good. And All-State wrestler, Anthony Tutora, like Hofstra wrestler. And there's a quote from me on there. I'm going to send it to you later. That's really funny that you said the Troy Nickerson camp. But go on.
Yes. So they quit. They went one day and Bill gave me back my money and that was that. And you know, the thing that I thought would sell Jacob was at the end of the day at camp, they gave out ice cream pops. I was like, oh, good. This is going to make Jacob come back. But no, they didn't go back. And Jacob has said to me like years later, he's like, oh, you know, I probably would have stayed, but Nathan really didn't like it.
Oh, come on. Blame it on the little brother. But you never know.
The other thing that I just remember when Jacob was going to join a club, it was, you were around, but I don't think he knew you so well yet. And I didn't know you. I mean, I knew Mike from youth, but I didn't know you so well yet. And I didn't know John at all. And I had only heard things about John and Empire or whatever it used to be called. And so I live 3 miles from Armonk where there's another club. And Somers is, you know, a half an hour. So me, the working full-time mom, crazy busy, I'm like, we have to go check out this other club. And even then, I think it was probably freshman year, Jacob's like, or maybe it was 8th grade. Jacob's like, I can't go to that other club. And I'm like, well, we at least have to check it out. Maybe you'll like it. Anthony and Mike will be okay with it. So we went there for one session for maybe 10 minutes. He wrestled. He's like, we walked out. He came over to me. He's like, we got to leave now. And I didn't ask any questions. We walked out. He's like, I can't do this. He's like, it's not Anthony and Mike. I can't do this. And that's when we went up to Empire.
And he ended up being basically, I mean, that year, his senior year, we had a couple of good guys. You know, we had Grippy, Camacho, but Jacob was one of the faces of the club. And it's so crazy that he became that. I mean, I believe it, but it's crazy. But let's jump to senior year because that was, you know, an unbelievable year. And I want to mention something about Jacob, and we'll talk to him a little bit about this when we interview him, but a lot of kids do a great job. A lot of kids we need to push though to work a little bit harder. Jacob was the guy his whole career. It wasn't even a senior year thing. Like senior year was probably like, actually senior year he probably was able to regulate himself a little better because he was so ready to go. He knew what he needed to do. But there was times in Jacob's career, and I'm sure for you, Wendi, as a mom, that we had to pull him back a little bit. Like, he just wouldn't stop. Like, he'd be getting up early to go to the gym. He would, stay after practice. And those are great attributes. You dream of those as a coach, right? But Jacob took it to the point where it was like, dude, you're going to burn yourself out. Like, take a day off. Don't go to practice tonight. Hang out with mom, eat some cookies, whatever it was, right?
You never told him to eat cookies.
Maybe I didn't tell him to eat some cookies. Maybe I said have some carrots and celery with your mom or something. But anyway, I don't know if and Aaron kind of too, they're just different personalities. Like, Aaron used to run to practice and do crazy stuff too, but they just had different personalities. I don't know if there's, like, Matt, we gave him that one break that one time, because those three guys were working harder than anybody I've ever coached. Anybody I've ever coached. But, and that includes the Skies and the Brocks of the world who worked really hard. But those three guys were so committed. They did everything. But Jacob was the one where it was kind of like, dude, you're going too hard. And did that happen with you at home sometimes, Wendi? Like, you had to tell him, like, hey, take it easy today. Like, you seem like you're getting really tired. You're like, relax.
As I said, Jacob needed to do something every day or he would drive us crazy. And that is still to this day. But he doesn't take a day off. He doesn't take a minute off. Even throughout this whole COVID, when he was home, he didn't take a day off.
Yeah.
He had a 50-pound plate in the back of his car for a day that he couldn't wrestle. And he had a whole workout to use on this 50-pound, but he gets that from you. Like, he doesn't take a day off.
We're like the same
It's very
person.
rare.
I was running at Wendi Park yesterday at nighttime, and a police officer came in and was like, what are you doing? Just running.
Now, you drive from your house to Wendi Park?
Well, it was nighttime, so I'm like, what am I going to do, run the street? So I wanted to hit the hill a little bit. So I was like, let me just go hit the hill, the sled hill. So I was just running it. And I texted, or I sent a message to the group, right? I put Jay Barrett and Matt in with the wrestlers now, just because every once in a while they'll come into the message and say something cool. So I like keeping them in there. And I sent a picture. Like, I just got to run in at 9 o'clock at night. What did you guys do today? Or what excuse did you make not to work hard? And Jacob was the only one that responded. And he goes, I got my work in today, Coach T, being a wise guy, but being serious at the same time. Like, I thought that was awesome because I know he did. He really did. We're very similar. We are very similar. And I'm actually a little scared of him now that he's 2 years into college. I don't want to mess with that guy. Mm-hmm. I'm like, don't tell him that. Actually, he's going to watch the damn interview. Shoot. Should have said that out loud. But so senior year, he's bought in, he's crushing it. Now, for the people that are listening, hopefully there's people that are listening, and we'll talk about it more when Jacob's on and let him get really in depth with this stuff. But there's a guy, named Jake Logan that's around, right? And nobody's tougher than Jacob Ferreira. Nobody. And that includes Jake Logan. But Jake Logan's wrestling pedigree, he was doing it longer. He was on varsity as a 7th grader. And at that club, GPS, I not a disrespect to them. I'm not trying to make this a club thing, but they're not as successful as Empire, but Jake was there by far their A1 guy. So he was getting all the attention over there. And granted, everybody over there was doing everything they could to keep their golden boy pretty much happy, right? And that's not a knock at Grant's coaching ability with other guys. I just know for a fact that Jake Logan was his guy and he wanted him to be as good as humanly possible. So he has that, right? Now, Jacob has the same advantage where he has me at Empire and John at Empire, but he's starting a couple years behind. And Jake Logan's a Fargo finalist, top 10 guy in the country. I think he was ranked as high as 4th or 3rd in the country at the time, like, very good wrestler. And I think we lost him maybe 3 or 4 times, but I will never forget, and we'll go through his whole senior year, Eastern States. And the year before that, and I'll tell you guys the story. I don't know if you guys know the story. I think Jacob does. Khalid, being Khalid, was trying to coerce Logan to come wrestle for Empire for a club duel thing. I don't know if it was Pop and Flow, whatever it may have been. He was trying to coerce him. And then he said no or whatever, respectfully said no and, whatever. And Khalid was like, well, if Jacob Ferreira beats you at Pop and Flow, then you have to come over here. And Logan responded with a laughing, crying face, right? Now, Logan actually, and we'll get into it more, actually ended up being very respectful to Jacob, and there was definitely a lot of respect there. Can't really blame Logan for that because at that time, Logan's results are a lot better than Jacob. So if I'm Jake Logan, I'm saying to myself, like, Jacob Ferreira beat me. Yeah, right. Like, what are you talking about? We get to Eastern States. Jacob runs through the tournament to get there. Unbelievable match with Dupre, pins him. That was one of my favorite matches I've probably ever seen. That was fun, too. That was great. then has a great semis match against the Missing Valley kid, majors him, I think, just dominates him, who's a good wrestler too, who gave him a really good match in freestyle the year before, and showed his progression, just dominates him at Easterns. We get to the finals and we lose like 5-3, 5-4 to Logan, and Logan was broke. If there was another 30 seconds in that match, Jake Logan loses that match. And it was almost a curse, like blessing and curse kind of thing, because if we saw Jake Logan at sectionals and he never saw Jacob Ferreira before, by that time of the season, Jacob beats him. But because Jacob gave him such a hard go at Easterns, Logan had to pull his bootstraps up and go, hey, like, this kid's for real. Like, and I remember, and Coach, you could speak for this. I'm never disrespectful to the athletes. Like, I push hard, but the other athletes, I always shake their hand. I'm always good with them. But I remember Logan pushing Jacob out of balance with about 30 seconds left in the match. And I caught Jacob. And I don't know why I said this, but I remember saying, he does not want it with you. Loud enough so Jake Logan heard me. Jake Logan heard me, and I shoved Jacob back in. And Jacob, ran back in there and, snapped him to the mat. And I'm telling you, if there was a little bit more time on the clock, he wins that match. Do you remember that tournament, Wendi? That was a great tournament.
I have aged from those tournaments.
Oh, it was the best, though. Those matches are my favorite. Oh,
my God. The Deprez match in that tournament, I don't remember the one after it, but then the Logan match. But I have to say, they were great matches. And with wrestling, any day it could go either way.
Oh, that match.
Unfortunately, it didn't go Jacob.
That match went either way, and I think Jacob wasn't sure he could beat him at that point. He was very confident, but I think if he had a little bit more confidence going in, he wins that match because he was there. And I think at that moment, Jake Logan was like, this is the real deal. Like, I better be prepared because this kid's coming for me. So as the season goes, and Coach, actually, you speak on it. I'm sorry. I didn't let you get in there. Easterns,
that was a great tournament. We won the sportsmanship award. We took 7th that year.
7th Eastern States. You hear that, kids that are listening right now? The team that went 9-11 dual meet record, who tried hard, but we were there 2 years ago. That wasn't that long ago, and we had 3 placers at that tournament. We had a 2nd, 3rd, and I think Schreiber took maybe 5th. So we had a 2nd, 3rd, and 5th at the tournament. We did, it was a great tournament. Aaron pinned his way through the wrestlebacks pretty much. Like, they were on fire. Yeah, and they fed off each other. They fed off each other. Like, there was definitely, watching each other win gets that momentum going, I feel like, and I think that definitely was a thing. So the season keeps going. We get to Westchester's next time we see him. Another dogfight. And Sal and Bimbo made the worst, I'm sorry, Sal, if you're watching this, but the worst call I've ever seen maybe in my coaching career of a potentially dangerous, because Jake Logan wasn't taken down for 2 years. And Jacob Ferreira was the only one that was close to taking him down. I mean, there were matches, right? But that was 2. I was about to be 2, and maybe Jacob wins that match, and that changes the whole momentum of the whole series, right? So that call happens, but I think he loses another 5-3 match. And like Wendi said, it's not like he was upset. But after every match, this guy's doing his cool down, right? He's doing the right stuff. He's doing everything right. Everything right, where we found out, and Wendi, I should probably joke about this. I remember this. I don't know if Wendi remembers. So when he was doing his senior experience, I was drinking a lot of kombucha at the time, which is, a very healthy drink. So me and Jay would go to the store and I'd get it in kombucha or something. And next thing you know, Wendy's like, man, you couldn't have got him into a habit that was $1.50. These things are $3.50 a pop. But next thing you know, Jacob's drinking them and they're stupid expensive. So I drink them every single tournament. He would always have it with him. He was a sponge. Whatever we were saying was good, he would do it, but those were great matches. And then, Jake, Coach, do you have any memories from senior year that stood out to you before states? Don't get to states yet. Anything that was substantial for Jacob?
I just love the way that Jacob led throughout his whole career. He was the same guy every day in practice. He didn't have ups and downs. He was just a steady incline. And he was a great role model for every kid coming up. He was great to all the kids. He was great to the – I don't remember him ever questioning or arguing or saying, I think we should do this. I think we should do that.
Never was.
He was just a great person to be around. He was one of the coaches, really, since he was a sophomore year, So
I think that for me as a mom, and this is one of the reasons I love wrestling, what I saw in Jacob's senior year was for high school practice, if he was wrestling you or Aaron, then he was, getting a workout. But high school practice he was just being a role model. He was being a leader, and it gave him a chance to learn how to lead. I remember him talking about Michael Amatrano and being and truly being proud of some of the other kids on the team. There was the freshman, I'm totally blanking on his name, who was really good freshman year. A low weight, 106, and he went to Fordham.
Oh, Dwyer.
Dwyer.
I own it.
Jacob totally like. I remember Jacob getting a call from Dwyer like, "Hey Jacob, I need someone to talk to. Can you pick me up?" Like, and
he
just
up
be.
Dwyer was a good kid.
Do you know what's interesting about Dwyer is he kept looking up to Jacob after that.
Yep.
I just remember him learning how to be that other side of a person. It wasn't all about Jacob. Like, yeah, he was working in high school, but even like at matches in high school, and this is not tooting his horn, but he didn't really have very competitive matches during the season.
Just Jacob Logan, really. And
right.
Just a couple of Sam DePrez matches, and that's it.
Yeah. So I really think that he got to learn how to be, you guys always say it, how to be a man. Like, he learned how to be a leader. He learned how to give to other people. It's not all about yourself.
Oh, big time. And he, it's so crazy because he was, like Coach Sabella says, like another coach. Like, the kids loved him, and he had fun with the kids and joke with them and stuff. And like him and Shriver would be funny together. That, to me, that was always like a funny relationship, those two, because like Jacob was so big and Matt was so small, and they were just like funny together. But they both were really good wrestlers. You know, and Aaron and Jacob mixing together too was funny because they're just totally different. You know, like on a different level. I would love their scraps. I would love it. Their senior year, I think Jacob took a jump just because of a little size and strength there. Before that, it might have been the other way, and they used to be so fiery about it. It was crazy, and I loved it, though. I think you kind of need that. You need that. They both wanted to win, you know, and guys I don't want to say nowadays, because it was 2 years ago, but sometimes guys are like, oh, he's going really hard. Maybe I'll, like, take a little bit of a back seat. Where these two are like, no, like, I'm not stopping. Like, I'm trying to win. There was tears shed some days. There was name calling. There was times when Coach Sator, Coach Sabella had to go like this, like get in the middle. There was times when I had to grab Jacob and say, we're wrestling today. Or I had to grab Aaron and do the opposite and say, you guys are not going today. I don't want this to happen again today. But they made each other better, right? Because there was that competitiveness. Aaron, his senior year, would scrap with me. Before that, he wasn't that as confident. He really wouldn't do it because I think he just looked at me as a coach and not as like a peer, and he couldn't compete with me. By the time Jacob's senior year came, I had to get myself ready for practice. Like, I couldn't just wrestle with him at all. And that, again, that goes to the Brocks, the Scotties, the Mitchells, not whoever we had. There was nobody like that where I literally had to make sure, like, you know, I drank water that day and I, like, you know, prepared myself because I could hurt myself because he's going to come at me and I'm going to get tired, you know, and we would battle. And I knew there was something different about him at that point because I remember looking at Coach a couple of times in positions. Like holding on to Jacob's ankle, I'm looking at Coach, like, oh my God, like he just won't stop. Like, but I love it. Like, and he really bought into everything that we needed him to buy into. I mean, it was great. But section finals comes. One of the tougher matches I had to watch, right? And he actually looked to me.
Could we skip over that?
No, because you know why I don't want to, Wendi? Because it shows again that who he is, and it's just, you know, he's just the best. And he actually started off that match the best. If you remember, he was on a nice high crotch, like right off the bat. He looked good. He looked ready to go. And I think they went out of bounds or something. They came back in, and Logan got him in a weird position. And it was almost Jacob's stubbornness that got him in trouble because Jacob didn't want to concede the takedown. If Jacob concedes the takedown, it's 2-0. We'll be okay. We're back in the match. But Jacob didn't want to concede the takedown, gets put in a bad position, and a really fast pin call gets called. You know, it still would have been 5-0, and Jacob Logan was really hard to score on, so it would have been hard to come back. But Jacob Ferreira shouldn't be getting pinned. That was a quick call, and it was hard to see them call that because I knew that bothered him. So when he goes to do his cool down, that's the first time, and really the only time, I saw a lot of emotion from him. And that's when it hit me that it hurt me just as much. Well, I can't say just as much, but almost as much, where he did everything right. And he said that to me. You know, he said that to me. He said, you know, why did this happen to me? I do everything right. And I remember sitting in that, you know, locker room while he was still doing his cool down. And I was just saying, like, you know, it's fine. You'll get back. You'll get into states. Sometimes, you know, things don't always happen the way they need to happen. And, you know, you'll learn from this. You'll get better. Next day, ready to go for states, wanted to practice. And I think that just shows something about him. Like, that might have been the most devastating loss of his career, but the next day he was ready to go. You know, do you remember, Wendy? That must have been a tough day home, though. He must have showed a little emotion. Like, he probably didn't let that one just go out the window, right? That one stayed a little. Stephanos, you talk about this one.
But you know what? I can only remember. My computer just. Are you okay? I can only remember the moments right after, and Jacob goes for his cool down. So I don't even know how he is. So I remember I left the room, you left the room, then I don't remember how he was for the 24 hours after. But again, I have to assume we came home and it's over. Like, he can't go back.
You got that. I mean, that's how he is.
That was always his philosophy.
I mean, but that's what we talk about all the time, right, Coach? Like, Tom Ryan talks a lot about suffering and chosen suffering. Chosen suffering is things you put yourself through to prepare yourself for real life suffering, right? And Jacob took part in a lot of chosen suffering where he was able to deal with that because he put himself in uncomfortable. I mean, will you always think about it? Yes. Will I always think about bad losses I had? Of course. But there's so many better memories that will, take his, it all was for good reason. Right, it was for good reason. I think he understands that. He's very mature in that way.
Well, and Jacob could have also probably chosen to go 195. He could have run from Logan and done 195. And I don't remember who won at 195, but he probably could have been pretty competitive at 195.
In the section, he would have dominated. It was Johnny, and I love Johnny. In the state, it was that kid Lowe, who was good too. But Jacob could have beat him, and either way, Jacob's a state finalist. You had the section title wrapped up if you go 195, but that was never really a thought for him. And I probably presented it to him, and I didn't want him to do that, right? But I didn't tell him I didn't want him to do that. I wanted him to make that decision himself. But never once was there like, I'm going up or whatever. It's like, no, I'm going to beat him. I'm going to beat this guy, and I love it that he said that. And I'm going to say,
I don't remember that ever being a thing.
No. And after states, I will say something that happened this year that shows me that Jacob caught up to that kid. Even though Jacob Logan's doing a really good job, but there is something that shows that he caught up to him. But we'll get to that soon. State finals comes. State tournament. Great animal. Just dominating. The kid he wrestled in the quarters was tough. I think Jacob majored him. Like, it was those three guys in the state. It was Jake Logan, Dupre, and Jacob, and nobody else was on their planet. And those three guys, and the next year, Dupre, however you say his name, dominated to a state title. So those guys were very good wrestlers. That semifinals match was one of my more memorable matches. I mean, geez Louise, did he have to give us a heart attack? But when he knows wrestling, but for people that really know wrestling, when somebody has double legs on you and you're on your belly, that's a really hard position to get out of, and especially in 30 seconds. And he did it. He reversed them. And my favorite part, rewatching the video, is he very barely celebrated. He got up. He pointed to some people, his friends in the crowd or whatever, shook the guy's hand, and went into his cool down. And I remember being like, this is so badass. Like, he is ready to go. That was unbelievable. Wendy, that had to be one of your favorite matches.
It was. I have it on my phone, and when I need a little inspiration to just keep going, I'll watch that match. And it was such a bad film job because I was shaking so much. It was amazing. It was like last second, and you know what it was? It was also, didn't Grippy and Grant? I think Grippy and Grant, one right after another, won in the last 5 seconds. So someone won in the last 5 seconds, and I was up in the stands hugging and kissing the family. And then the next one won in the last 5 seconds. I was up and kissing, and then it was mine, and he won in the last 5 seconds.
It was a crazy round, and it capped off with Jacob. That round was unbelievable. That's going to be another thing that will not be duplicated. Like, that was crazy, and that match was crazy. But it was fun. That was really fun. I remember me and DeBells going back to the hotel, and like, you couldn't not. The Hilton coaches probably hated us because Jacob did that, and then on the other side, right after that match, Matthew had his Conti semis match or something. Like, there was a little break after the semifinals, and then Matt has Conti semis match against another Hilton kid, and Matt beat that kid. And I remember me and you had these like big cheesy smiles on, and they probably were like, these freaking Greeley guys. Like, I know that had to bother them, but so we get to the state finals, and now here's one of my most proud moments, and I spoke about this before, but it might be bigger than Eastern States as a junior, Stendies at Oswego, the Prez at Easterns, semis at States. So Jacob wrestles Logan.
Is this the one you teased us with at the beginning?
Yes.
Okay.
So Jacob wrestled a great match, but lost. Those matches were one takedown matches. Logan was able to get that one takedown, and then they both battled it out, and we were close, but we couldn't finish. We couldn't close the door, right? And it is what it is. So at the end of the match, Jacob goes to Eddie Ortiz, the New Rochelle coach. Jake Logan's a New Rochelle guy, and shakes his hand. And I see them talking. And I'm like, oh, God. And I love Jacob. At this point, like, Jacob's like, a little brother or a stepson at this point. So I'm good with what he's about. But you lose a match like that, emotions are running. I'm a little nervous of what he's saying, right? I'm like, what could he be saying to these guys right now? So I let it go, though, whatever. He disappears. He comes up to us. I think he shakes both of our hands, walks away. And I remember looking at Coach DeBellis and saying, I'm going to give him like 10, 15 minutes before I, go see if he's okay. So I'm like bracing myself. I'm like, geez Louise, I'm going to have to see this guy in the bag. He's going to be really upset. It didn't happen for him. This is going to suck. So I walk back there, and this kid is doing his cool down. Not a tear in his eye, doing his cool down, cool as a cucumber. I'm like, are you okay? And he said to me, and this might be a little bit botched, but pretty much what he said to me was, Coach, I wanted to win a state title. It didn't happen. I didn't beat that kid this year, but I will beat him. Whether it's this summer in college, I will beat him. And the lessons I learned in the Greeley wrestling room are way more important than a state title. As he's doing his cool down, that is some serious maturity for an 18-year-old. And I remember looking at him, and I think I told him to shut up. I was like, shut up. You're going to make me emotional. Stop talking. And, like, he kept doing his cool down. And then I see Eddie Ortiz. So I'm like, oh, we just had a great moment, me and Jacob. Is he going to tell me that he said something negative? And he comes up to me and says, Jacob's a really good kid, man. I go, why? He goes, Jacob said to me, thanks for all the battles this year and made me a better wrestler. Who says that after a state finals? That's like next level maturity. I was like so shocked. And then Jake Logan came up to me. It was like, how did Jacob Ferreira get so much better in 1 year? He is so tough. And it was like everybody was like positive, and it just shows, although it didn't end like the Cinderella story we wanted to end, right? And like the storybook ending, to me, that was almost as good as an ending, because everybody in that arena respected him. Everybody in New York State knew who Jacob Ferreira was, and they knew he was a tough son of a gun. Like, people would come up to him and talk to him. Like, he got a reputation. Like, so I don't know. Wendi, did I ever tell you that story, or you don't know that story?
Yeah, you told me that.
Oh, okay.
You told me that.
I probably tell a lot of people that story, but that's right up there with Aaron winning a state title, and I love Aaron winning style. It's not even Aaron's fault. He couldn't do anything better. He just dominated, right? But like, that story of maturity and growth to me is just like, that's what we do it for. We want state titles, but we want you to be the best version of yourself. And you showed me right then and there that he was ready for the real world. I'm not worried about Jacob Ferreira. Like, he'll do whatever he does, he's going to do well because of that mindset. Dude, what's going on? I'm losing you.
But that also, and you're losing me?
No, just to balance. He's like frozen down there.
All right.
Okay.
Joanne had to use the computer.
Oh.
I have to say, I think Mike and Anthony, that Jacob's strength, Jacob's maturity, of course it comes from great parenting, but it comes from that Greeley family. It's wrestling. It's all the support and encouragement he had. It's Deagle. It's you guys. It's the parents, cheering him on in the stands and giving him and being there. It's the parents of the Greeley team. It's everything. That's what you can't even describe what wrestling does. I mean, I knew nothing about wrestling. As I said, I signed him up as a chubby second grader. Never did I believe that it would give him his, who he is. I mean, Jacob had signs hanging on his ceiling and on his door, I will be a state champ. And he didn't become a state champ, but he's a champ,
Oh, for sure.
He's a winner. He said it in his speech at the wrestling dinner. He's like, I lost. I'm officially a loser, but I am such a winner.
I love it. And he knew it though, too, right? And we talk about that all the time. Like, it's bigger than wrestling. The wrestling for Jacob and Aaron and Matt, who are at the next level wrestling now, it's still going to end eventually, right? And what are you going to get out of this sport that's going to help you cope with things and be able to be a tougher person than the regular person? And, Jacob's the prototype of that guy that did the right stuff, and it will pay dividends for him. And I don't know if we'll ever have another Jacob Ferreira. It's going to be hard to emulate that. We'll have another state champ, right? We'll have another state finalist. We'll have some really good guys. We'll have kids that we care deeply about. Like, there might never be another Isabel Garcia. She's unbelievable, right? Like, so kids are great. There's different kind of kids, but Jacob was like another level. Like there's something about him I can't really explain it unless you kind of did it with us. And he's still like that. And now he's doing great in college. He's doing a good job. And the thing I want to say with Logan, and this is not I actually ended up getting a little bit to know Logan a little bit more the next year. And he's a very nice kid, has a lot of respect for Jacob. When he went to Southern Scuffle, he lost to Bullard, like 6-1. And Jacob beat Bullard like 7-3 in the wrestle off. Now it's wrestling math, but that also shows you that he's there and he can take this guy now. And he's getting better every day. He's in a really good room with a really good coach and a really good system. A lot of people like that guy, Machiavelli or whatever his name is in that program, who was, not a superstar, ended up being an NCAA champion. Like, he's in the right place. And if it doesn't work out for him, it's going to be the same exact thing because he's going to throw everything he could into it and he'll get better for it and it'll help him after. And we're lucky that Wendi was so supportive, Jose was so supportive of the whole process because we need everybody, right? If Wendi wasn't supportive, like, Wendy's she gets nervous about her kids. I mean, any mom would, right? But she never would say, no, don't do that. It was more like, do you think we should do this? Do you think it's okay? Like worrying about her son, but never in the way of their progress, if that makes sense.
I think I only really questioned you when you had him going 285.
When did we do that? I don't even remember that.
No.
He probably won.
Or maybe 220, or I don't remember.
He probably won, though.
He did. It was high school. Those are the only times I was like, oh, my God, what are you doing?
But you still wouldn't even. You might have said something to me, but you weren't like,
no,
you're the worst. I still, for the people listening, I still get occasionally a kombucha and an apple from Wendi Ferreira at tournaments. So it's great. But, we'll wrap up soon. And Wendi, I'll let you say whatever you want to say to finish. But I'm super proud of Jacob and who he's become. And, I'm proud that he's a Greeley guy and he's a guy that we could claim because who he is and he's part of us. And I'm not, the funny story is he came back last summer and he's getting good. I mean, Division I wrestling is a whole nother animal. And being in a room like NC State or even when he was at Bucknell, it's still Division I wrestling. And me and him are wrestling one day and he beat the crap out of me. He beat me like 8 takedowns to 1, and he never beat me in his life because he was a high school kid. I was a man, right? But now he's in college. And college is a different animal, and he beats me 8 takedowns to 1. I remember being like, geez, Louise, am I getting that old, or is he just a killer? And I was exhausted. Jacob laughed, actually, and texted me that night and says, hey, coach, maybe you should slow down because I don't want to see you at 50 in a wheelchair. Like, you're crazy. Because I almost got him like, he was up 8 takedowns to 1. If you asked him about this, Wendi, I kept coming, though, because I couldn't deal with him killing me. But he kept taking me down. Nothing better happened. So I was at the gym. DeBells, I don't know if you know this story. I was at the gym the next day, and Wendi asked me how Jacob was doing. Like, he's doing really well. He actually beat the crap out of me yesterday. And she said, shh, don't say anything, but he told me. And I remember telling him, Jacob, you told your mom you beat me up? And he started laughing. He's like, whatever. And we went 1 10-minute go, and I won 1 takedown to 0. And to this day, I'm not going to wrestle him again because he's going to beat the crap out of me. But I'm going out on top, and that's it. I'm done with Jacob Ferreira. I'll drill with him. I'll spar with him. I do not need a beating from Jacob Ferreira. So that was fun. D, where are you going? You're back?
It's an internet thing. It's an internet thing.
All right. So
one thing I want to share about Wendi and the whole Ferreira family. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that even after Jacob graduated, Wendi would still write letters to like Isabella Garcia when she did something. Yeah. And that just speaks volumes of how vested the Ferreiras are into Greeley wrestling and how much you guys helped us become what we are. I mean, it has a lot to do with coaches, it has a lot to do with the kids, but it has a lot to do with the parents and the parents supporting with their kids' goals and sacrificing time and money and everything to let them reach their goals. Thank you.
That was my fault too, Wendi. I'm sorry. Like when you talk about Jacob, it's so hard not to get like caught up in what he did, right? But like Wendi, we talk about in a lot of these interviews, but what these parents did, especially the Ferreiras and that early group, were unbelievable. Like they taking them to tournaments, going up to the club, carpooling, all these things that would have been impossible without them. And I feel like Wendi and Jose have such a good yin and yang where Wendi is like big wrestling fan. Jose doesn't dislike wrestling, but he's like the more laid back one. And it's just a good like system they have. And like their kids respond to it and they care a lot about the Greeley guys and just great. I don't know. I can't thank the Ferreiras enough. They did so much for us. And the amateur trials are doing a great job. And I hope we continue to have that type of parent support, parental support.
And Wendi was always a great check. Like if something was going on, I would know about it because Wendi would say, Mike, do you think that this is, and I'd say, oh, okay, yeah. Maybe we should do this. And we'd say, okay, maybe we'll reconsider that. Because it was, it was a group effort to try to make decisions, We weren't the type of group where it's our way and that's it. And it's going to be this way. We were kind of flexible where, hey, if it's good for the kids, it's good for us. Let's do it. We don't want to stand in the way.
100%.
But Wendi was great. Thank you, Wendi, for great.
Yeah, she's
Thank
awesome.
you.
The best. Wendi, we're gonna wrap up soon, but you want to say anything to wrap up before we wrap this sucker up?
Just really thank you, because look at where Jacob is. He one of the other just things, like, he has strength not only as a wrestler but as a person. Like, even just transferring last year in August, deciding one day and making it. I mean, he left in August. He decided to transfer. Just his strength, his pride, he's determined. He's not scared of anything, and that's going to bring him far in life.
Yeah.
So I thank you for that.
Like I said before, there's never. I'm not worried about Jacob because of things that he learned through wrestling. And I like to think that most of our kids we're not really worried about because they seem like they get a good pedigree out of us and their families and everything like that. But I'm extremely confident that Jacob's going to do something special. Whether it is being a teacher and a coach, he's going to be a great teacher and a great coach. He's going to be a great dad. He's going to do good at all of that stuff. And I'm excited to see where he's going. And just to touch on Wendy's letter to Izzy, the message that she sent, I'm not a very emotional person. And that almost got me. And I was like, holy cow, like, what the heck? Like, so, and it's her, it's Schreiber, it's Steve Walk was at County's cheering Izzy on. It's just like, we're very lucky. And especially that group of three was different. I don't know what really made it so different, but it was different. And I can't really put a word on it. But there was something there. Maybe it was the faith, the trust, the bond that we all, like, everybody understood what was happening. And that went from Wendi to Steve to David to to Carol, to all of them. They all were like on the same page, and it was great. Kathy, everybody. So
it was a great roller coaster ride.
It was awesome. You can't make stuff like that. But Wendi, we really appreciate you coming on. You're crushing it right now, Wendi. I'm just saying, emotion-wise, we're good.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't cry.
You did a really good job.
I almost cried when we were talking about the sectionals, yeah.
Yeah, you saw how I tried to flip it to the bells there?
Yeah.
I
did. I got you. You always got my back, Anthony.
Yeah, but even then, for me, it was hard, and I like to say, like, oh, I'm not emotional, but when somebody's doing the best that they can in everything they do, it's hard not to feel something like that, right? Like, to me, that stuff's way more heart-wrenching and emotional than, like, a sad movie or something. That's fake, right? This is real life. And but the way that keeps me happy and keeps me smiling is knowing that they got way more out of it than they lost out of it, right? Like, so Jacob lost a couple of tough matches. He won a lot more important things. And I'm not talking about the wins and losses on the mat. Like, who he is now is far more important than being a state champion. And that's why I put that in one of maybe my most proud moments as a coach. So, D, you got anything to wrap this sucker up?
We love you.
Thanks. We love you too.
It's very true. All right. So I'll stop recording. And that's it.